today's video, we are once again taking a look at Tropical Storm Brett alongside our other tropical disturbance in the Atlantic that we also need to talk about. So we're going to be breaking down these two systems and then also talking about the weather across the nation, basically the lower 48, as there is tons of storminess up and down the East Coast from Florida to Maine. We're talking about extremely far above average precipitation for everybody. Now, let's talk about this cone forecast. Obviously, now the National Hurricane Center is calling for Tropical Storm Brett to move into the southern Caribbean. The furthest northward that their cone allows Brett to basically go towards is Jamaica. So that is probably the very northern extent of where you could expect this to even possibly go. But as you can see, it kind of breaks into more of a horizontal flow, and it's heading right towards Nicaragua and Honduras, and it's just not a really productive trajectory for tropical development. So we can expect probably a weakening of this system, Tropical Storm Brett. Now, as we take a look at the 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook, clearly Brett is not the only disturbance, as we do have an 80% chance of development with the cyclone behind it over the next 7 days, a code red. And this one looks to break towards the northern Caribbean, which definitely poses a lot of questions and risks for different folks. So we need to talk about that. I think what's interesting is, well, for one thing, the elephant in the room here is we have two systems in the MDR, or main development region, in the month of June, which is just so unheard of. And then not only that, but we have two systems, one into the southern Caribbean and one into the northern Caribbean. So we get two very drastically different trajectories and two drastically different risk levels associated with those two paths. So be sure to subscribe. We're going to talk about this every single day as we talk about that day 2 outlook. As you can see, we have Brett. We have our disturbance behind it with a 70% chance of development over the next 2 days. But not only that, if you look further eastward, it looks like there's probably another disturbance there off of Africa. Probably going to be talking about a third potential tropical system out there. Just so crazy to think about. Again, we're taking a look at June 21st today. We're at June 21st. And that is the extreme level of tropical activity we're talking about. You maybe have one system in June, and usually it's near the Gulf of Mexico or near the East Coast, not out here in the middle of the Atlantic. That just shows how far above average we're talking about as far as the sea surface temperatures are concerned out here in the Atlantic. Very, very interesting stuff, and just so rare. Now, let's talk about our typical weather stuff, the lower 48. And as you can see, we're dealing with a lot of storminess in the east. And as we head towards tomorrow, that's going to be Thursday the 22nd, we can see this area is filled with precipitation. Not only that, we also have a pretty intense area of storminess across the northern plains, I would call it, and then areas just east of the Rockies there. A lot of storminess happening in that pocket as well. As we approach Friday the 23rd, we can still see precipitation up and down this eastern corridor here, for not only the East Coast, but also the Ohio Valley and surrounding regions. So very, very interesting to say the least. Definitely going to be in a far above average time frame here for precipitation. By the time we reach Saturday the 24th here, we see areas along the southeast and the northeast here dealing with these intense storms and areas of precipitation. I would say by this point it's mostly for the northeast. Southeast has already seen days and days and days of rainfall, though. As we take a look at the northern plains and the upper Midwest here, we can also see an intense area of storminess in this pocket as well for Montana and Wyoming, the Dakotas there, and then Minnesota and Iowa as well. So there's two main areas of activity. By the time we reach Sunday the 25th here, again, we have this area in the upper Midwest, and then also this pocket in the Mid-Atlantic up through the northeast. Now, as we keep going towards Monday the 26th, we can see that this low here develops over Michigan, 999, which is actually pretty intense for this time of year. And we can see this is just bringing overall chances at showers and scattered thunderstorms throughout the main area of the eastern United States. So we're talking about most everyone in the eastern third of the nation, which is probably about half of the population of the U.S., is going to be dealing with the impacts of this storm by Monday, June 26th, which is very, very interesting to say the least. I mean, so many people being impacted here. As we reach Tuesday time frame, that's going to be the 27th of June. We can see that this moves further east, and we're still dealing with storms up and down this East Coast corridor here. So I'm going to draw this arrow here to kind of indicate that. As you can see, just from coast to coast, Florida to Maine, we see the Gulf Coast, the East Coast, all of these areas dealing with these intense thunderstorms and maybe even more persistent pockets of rainfall. This doesn't end completely on Wednesday, June 28th. You can see we still dealing with this storminess there in the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. Very interesting. Thursday, June 29th here, we can see that we are dealing with still a lot of storms there in the Northeast, New England areas in this corridor, and still for the upper Midwest as well, dealing with some scattered and isolated thunderstorm activity. Now by Friday, which is going to be the 30th of June, we can still see these kind of isolated and scattered storms across the southeast coast, the northeast coast, all throughout there. And we actually have our next storm system moving down into kind of the eastern half of the nation. And we're going to have to see into the beginning of July how that shapes up, but we could be looking at another round of high activity there in the east. Now, total precipitation due to these two pockets of major storminess, we see that the north central United States is seeing above average amounts, and same story here for the entire East Coast here. As you can see, dealing with far above average precipitation in the reds. That's going to be anywhere from 2 to 5 inches, and then the browns are going to be 5 to 10 inches of precipitation. Serious rainfall on the way for the east and then the northern plains as well. I can't iterate that enough. I mean, really, we are dealing with just so much rainfall there. And then snowfall finally coming to an end as we reach into early July. That might be the case as Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming have just a couple of inches left. Same story with the Sierra Nevadas. It looks like we're finally winding down here for these areas. Now, the temperature pattern, as you can see, we're dealing with a negative PNA out west. I know I say it so much, but this PNA, Pacific North American Oscillation, is what that's short for, is so detrimental to the pattern, is the #1 driver in our pattern here in the US. And as you can see, this brings warm temperatures to the east overall. We have a cutoff low here that is bringing colder temperatures to the east, and that's been the case since the very, very beginning of June. We do see warmth briefly wanting to take over, but as you can see, that cold just takes back over by the time we're taking a look at Thursday, the 29th there. And now, by this point, the problem is we have a positive PNA developing. So as you can see, positive PNA, warmer temperatures out here. That is going to encourage more and more cold air into the east. And this does not look to end anytime soon due to these teleconnections. Even when we're in a negative PNA, we see cold temperatures in the east. So let alone a positive PNA. And as you can see, by July 6th, we're still dealing with these colder temperatures in the east. And honestly, I don't have any news as to when I think that's going to come to an end. So you're just going to have to continue to tune in daily as we just take a look at this. And we're going to continue to track it for you guys. So be sure to subscribe. Like I've mentioned multiple times, we do upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I will see you guys in the next video.